Starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hey everybody, I hope you guys are enjoying your Monday. And yeah, I hope you guys saw some of the videos that were posted about the meteorite. And also, there's just one posted about a mega pod of dolphins. That was very cool. Uh, a very interesting thing to capture. If you guys have time, check those out. Mr. D just likes putting up little news clips he sees around. Not all of them have to do with engineering, but they're all very cool. So today we are going to move on to learning a little bit about CAD software. We're going to get Sketchup on our computers, and we're going to dedicate some time at the beginning of class to do that. So that'll be good. All right, we just have a few more people arriving. I'm going to wait a little bit just to give everyone some time to get here. But yeah, we'll be using this software. It starts out really basic, where you're just drawing lines and shapes, and then pretty quickly you realize how cool it is, how complex and intricate you can make your designs. And it's really intuitive. We're going to be learning, or I'll be teaching you guys the basics today. But tonight, if you want to play around with it, mess around with it, it's really fun because you get to make your own, models and shapes. I played around with it and made my own little home after just trying it out for 5 or 10 minutes. You can really get some cool 3D shapes going. So hopefully you guys are going to enjoy this. All right, let's start the presentation now that most everybody's here. So this is SketchUp, and when we download it, I want you guys to make sure you're not getting SketchUp Pro, just SketchUp 8, not SketchUp Pro. We don't need SketchUp Pro quite yet. You have to pay for that. SketchUp is free if you just get the 8. It is available through Google, which is awesome. You do not need to get Chrome to download this. I just want to let you guys know Google might ask you if you want Chrome, but you don't need to get it. You can run it using Internet Explorer or Safari. Um, Google is just interested in you using their web browser. But yeah, this is what it looks like when you start it up. There's a little person there for scale. We'll be seeing this in a little bit. Yeah, but you start just very basic with your axes. If you guys have seen in math class, you know about the x and the y and the z axis. Maybe not the z, that one is for 3D, but on 2D, you have your horizontal x-axis and your vertical y-axis, where there's also a z-axis that comes straight out of the page. So that's these here. And it just makes it so you can see things in 3D. All right, and this was made using the software, and you'll see how you can add, things like the paint like stones and stuff like that, but just really intricate. Even up here, these figures were all made using the software with just adding shapes in this bridge. And so people use it for architecture to plan new buildings or design old ones. And here is an example. Someone was designing what, similar to like what an Xbox would be, but if Apple made it. They design their own little model, and you can do that really easily, as opposed to having to create an actual model. You can use this software. All right, so today what we're going to be doing is learning, or we're going to install. We're actually going to spend about 10 minutes just letting everyone install SketchUp, and you're not going to be running this on your Pis. We will be doing some stuff with CAD software on our Pis, but SketchUp is really intuitive and easy to learn, so we're going to start with SketchUp. And then we'll go through how, kind of the basics of SketchUp. All right, so let's start with downloading Sketchup 8. So I'm going to exit out of here, exit out of presentation mode, ask if there are any I don't see any questions so far. Are there any questions from anyone? Great. This is safe to put on your computer, completely safe. I have it on my computer. Let's see, one question. Does Sketchup have a virus? No. It does no viruses on Sketchup. It's a very legitimate program made by Google. All right, but yeah, you gotta be safe when you get stuff from the internet. All right, so I am actually going to copy this over for you guys, and you'll find it. You'll be able to click the link when I go into chat, and I want everybody to be doing this now, so this should be sending to everyone. And what happens when you click that link? It'll take you here. I already have SketchUp, so I'm not going to download it on my computer, but choose whether you have Windows or Mac, and then agree to download. Again, there are no viruses and will not harm your computer, and we're going to put it on our laptops or computers, not on our Raspberry Pi. You're going to press agree and download, and if you are using a Mac, a DMG file, a disk mounting graphic file will open, and you're going to have more steps. So downloading is not going to put it onto your computer. It will download the files onto your computer, and then you have more steps from there. Double click on the icon that comes up, or the file that gets downloaded. If you're using Windows, it might be a zip file. So you're going to agree and download, and then there are steps after that. So it's about 3:37 now. Going to give everyone about 10 minutes to put this on their computers. As soon as you have it up, it really shouldn't take that long. Great. Joseph already has his downloaded. That's awesome. As soon as it's ready, raise your hand. We'll just give everyone a few minutes. If you want, if you have it already downloaded, you can mess around in it a little bit. Just try it out. We will be going over how to do everything today. But if you want to just try how things work, you can kind of click on the shapes and see how intuitive it can be, but also kind of tricky. You need to know the basics. I don't want you guys playing around with it while we're learning, but before we get started, you can just see if you can get some of this stuff to work. Great, and remember to put your hand up as soon as you have it downloaded, and send me a question if you have any questions on how to access it. Great, and just make sure you put your hand up. Or send me a question if you can't put your hand up. Make sure you're putting your hands up or letting me know that you're on an iPad or something like that, but when you're ready to continue. Give everyone a few more minutes. All right. All right, great. So I think most people um, have it downloaded or installed. Some people are saying it's still working, but hopefully you can follow along with us now, and it will be downloaded um, by the time we start. Oh, strange, Daniel. Says here. Mr. D just sent an email to your mom. So you should be getting that link. If not, you can send the link I just sent you, and that should work on another computer. So just let me know. Okay, great. I'm glad you sent her the link. All right, I'm going to put everyone's hands down, and let's continue with the lesson. So now we have our Sketchup installed. Let's go back to this screen. This is the screen that pops up when you start Sketchup. So I'm actually going to exit out of Sketchup so you guys can see that. So if you guys are in the game right now messing around with stuff, go ahead and exit out so that you can keep up with me in this webinar. So everybody should be at the same place. So I'm going to press maybe later and don't save. I'm going to go into my applications. So everyone should be starting SketchUp right now if you have it downloaded. All right, and this window pops up. Great, Daniel. Yeah, just keep me on the update. All right, so this is the window that pops up, and you can see that my default template is already architectural design millimeters, and that's what you guys are going to want to choose as well. There's different templates, and we're using millimeters because we're going to get used to building really small, because that's what we're going to be using when we use our 3D printers. So we just want to get used to this template. And then start using SketchUp, and that will launch. First thing, it starts with this mouse the select pointer. All right, oh great, it works, excellent. Oh, excellent, Jonathan. All right, so we have our pointer here, and it always will start out with this, just this 2D woman. You can actually just click and delete her. We don't need her there. It's just a perspective so that you could see how big or how small, right? Because from this point of view, if you're trying to build a table, for example, I'm going to do Command Z, so I bring her back. You would know, okay, we're not, this isn't 1 millimeter by 1 millimeter space right here. We know a millimeter is probably going to be down here when we're building lines. Something much smaller. It's just using for perspective, but we don't need that right now. Back to the presentation. Yeah, so the selection tool is our default choice. And then as we go through, we have this, which will draw lines. These are also called edges. And then we have our axes, which we talked about before. The x-axis is red, the y-axis is green, and the z is blue. And again, so we learned, when you guys learned about this in math, it's the horizontal and the vertical are the x and the y, and then the blue would be coming right out of the page, perpendicular to both of those, and that's the z-axis. It makes things 3D. So if you lay a piece of paper, down on this floor, that would be like what you see on your graph paper with the y and the x-axis. And then the person standing up on that paper is next to the z. You can see that when you change the camera perspective, she is actually 2D. It just gives you a different perspective there. Right, and so we are going to, in a second, learn how to draw a line or an edge. And you can draw them parallel to axes by the color of the line. All right, and we are going to have you guys try this out. Yes, running the setup installer is what you're supposed to do. If someone asked that question, that is correct. All right, so we're going to draw a line, and how you do that is you click on that pencil up there. If you hold your mouse over it, it will tell you that that is the line tool. All right, and then, ooh, my computer is frozen. There we go. So, you guys might be familiar with using Microsoft Word and inserting an image into there, something like that, where you click on your mouse and you do not unclick and then you pull. That is actually not what we're going to be doing. What I want you guys to get really used to doing is clicking and taking your finger off of the mouse and then moving it around. And what you can see is then you don't necessarily have to hold down the mouse, though it will still work. You can take your hand off the mouse and move the mouse around. It just lets you be more precise and accurate and take your time when you're plotting these lines. And it's not always apparent. If you guys know parallel, it means side by side so that the lines never cross. And you can tell if the line that you're going to make is parallel to the different axes depending on the color it is. So here it's parallel to the green axis, to the red or the x-axis, and to the blue or the z-axis. But if you look at this green line, those don't necessarily look parallel, right? You wouldn't necessarily guess that. I'm going to click again to finish my line, and I'm going to press escape because I don't want to build another line. And I'm going to show you guys how to do this in a second, but I'm going to change perspective so you guys see that these lines are indeed parallel. It just did not necessarily look like that from the angle we were at, right? But they are parallel. So using Sketchup, it makes it easy to tell if your lines are parallel to the different axes by the color, instead of us having to guess. Here, this line is parallel to the blue axis or the z-axis, even though I necessarily wouldn't have guessed that that line would be. And when we move around again, and again I'm going to show you guys that tool, you can see how it is parallel. All right, so I want you guys to practice drawing a line. Everybody go ahead and try drawing a line and raise your hand when you've done it. And I want you to draw a line parallel to any axis. So you just click once to start your line and click a second time to finish your line. And if you don't want to draw another line, you hit escape. Raise your hand once you've done that. Great. See a lot of raised hands. Excellent. Max did it. Excellent. Sherry, I know you're using an iPad. All right. Great. And if you guys want to, oops, I don't want that line. If you want to delete the lines that are on your page, because we're not going to be using them, go back to your pointer, your selection tool, hold down, and this time you will be holding down, and highlight all of your lines in that box. They will all be blue, they'll all be selected, and you can use a delete or your backspace key. Put everyone's hands down. All right. All right, some people's SketchUp is still loading. Hopefully you can just be keeping up with this presentation. Sorry about that, Jonathan, but hopefully you can be paying attention to there while that's getting put on your computer. Thanks for keeping it. Hopefully most of this is self-explanatory, or not self-explanatory, but pretty easy to get once you see what the different tools do. All right, so let's move on to rectangles, which are called surfaces. And what you'll notice, so this is the rectangle button. Again, I click one time to start, and then I can move my mouse and click again to finish. And with this rectangle, first, a couple things you're going to notice. I'm going to move it back to this pointer key. First of all, it's surrounded by 4 black edges, and I can select those individually. So when you're building a rectangle, you're really building 4 edges, and then the inside it's being filled in. And that's just important because you're going to be able to do the same things you can do with this line or this edge tool that you can with the rectangles, with the edges of the rectangles. All right. And I'm going to go back to this line tool just to show you guys these different markings. If you hover your mouse over, if you want to draw another line or a rectangle, you can see that SketchUp tells you if it's an endpoint, if your point is on the edge of a surface, on that line, and that will be red. This dot is green. If it's on the edge, it's red. And when it's at the midpoint or halfway down that line, it becomes kind of that cyan blue. And it just is letting you know for when you're marking. All right, so why don't you guys try building a rectangle and deleting it. You can see when I build mine, it wants to build parallel or perpendicular to these different planes, right? So this one, and with that blue axis there, delete it. Oops. Let's try here. It wants to build accordingly to the planes. Blue, kind of that red, and the green. All right, so everybody have a chance to do that. If you guys have any questions, just let me know. Hey Nico, what's your question?
I was just holding my hand up.
Oh, okay, great. Do you have a question, Zachary? Any questions?
No, ma'am. I was just saying that I had finished downloading it and I was playing around with it.
Okay, great. I'm glad that you are exploring it, but for now, if you could just make sure that you are playing around with it along with our presentation, that'd be great, because there are some things that are very self-explanatory about SketchUp and some things that aren't as self-explanatory. It's important you get all the information today. All right. The template that you pick is it's architectural in millimeters. Great. And someone said that they made a stick figure. That's awesome. But make sure you are paying attention because things are going to get a little bit more complicated in a moment. As similar to the rectangle, you can also build a circle. You click to get the center, and then you can pull your mouse out to make it bigger, smaller. All right, it's a similar situation. And we have our center and our edges. I'm going to delete this. Go back to the presentation. All right, so now we're going to add some 3D. Effect. We're going to have the circle. Pull our circle out. And then we're going to press this button, which is called the push-pull button. And when I put my cursor over the circle, you see that those blue dots indicate that the surface is being selected, so the edges aren't being selected, but the surface. And then I can click once and drag my mouse up and down to create either an into or kind of this out surface. I can select again. I'll show you guys in a second how to change your camera view, but you made this 3D surface. And I can put a rectangle on the face of this surface. And again, select this push-pull. I can either select this outer surface and pull up or down, and you can see how that changes the 3D. Select that inner surface down there. You can make a tower coming up or down. Very cool. That can come out here, and you can kind of play along with it. All right, so that's starting to get a little bit more complicated. And then again, that's the edge and versus the surface. Now let's talk a little bit about panning versus orbiting. When you pan, there's no angle change, and when you orbit, there is an angle change. So let me show you what I'm talking about. This button is the panning button. It's the hand, and it allows you to move around without changing the angle, without be kind of like moving your body without moving your neck or your head. And then the button next to it with the kind of crazy arrows is the orbit, and it allows you to change the angle. But you can't really move to the left and right. It just changes the angle that way. Kind of like a sphere around that spot, and you just move around the sphere. And then you can also zoom in and out by dragging the cursor with the magnifying glass. So that's the orbit, orbits around, pan just moves you, and the zoom, kind of self-explanatory. All right, you guys can be trying that out. The last thing that I'm going to show you guys with just looking at the tools for right now is this I'm going to delete everything we have. You got to make sure and highlight everything you want to delete, because if you miss even a corner, I have almost everything, but I don't have right down there. It won't include those edges. And your surface will go away, but you'll still have those edges. Backspace. I'm going to pan over so we get a better view. All right, and I'm going to create a 3D object using my push-pull. Let everyone catch up. I want you guys to make a rectangle like this, a little box. My different surfaces and my edges there. Highlight specific edges or specific surfaces. Again, this is a surface and this is an edge. And we're going to rotate it using this rotate. And when I click the rotate, we get this. And so it lets us rotate based on the axis. So this is the red, the green, and the blue. So you can click on that, make sure that you are staying right there on the face, and you can turn it and it gets a little weird. It's like you are moving just the top and not the bottom of this surface. So it's kind of twisting it and rotating it, right? So on the red axis, you click and click again, and you can twist it that way. So it's just twisting the one side of the surface, right? It's just the side that we have that's blue, and the other side remains the same so that we can flip it all the way over and it would just be like completely twisting it. You can get some cool things there. And if you see, I have it on the edge right there. I can twist just an edge, rotate just an edge. Oops. All right, and if we just have a flat shape, a 2D shape, oops. We can rotate it at its center. And you see it, nothing really happens because it's getting confused about the axis that we are. So what it's doing, it's taking this 3D shape and allowing you to twist it. So you guys can play around with that. And if you do it with more of a cylinder, you can see the interesting things. Right, with a cylinder, if you twist it this way, you shouldn't expect to see any difference. Oh. Right? Because even as you twist it, it's just twisting it, flipping it upside down. When we did that with the box, it was taking this surface as separate from the one back here. But with the cylinder, all the surface is the same. It's one connected surface. So when I tried to twist it, all it did was really rotate it. All right, so any questions with this? How we can use this? Great. Okay. We're not going to get really into rotating in a little bit, but what we will be using is this move tool. And you can use the move tool, which I should be showing you guys how I got there. The move tool right here. You can either highlight a whole object, and use the move tool, to move the whole object around, right? Or, see if I can, and that will actually combine the surfaces. Oops. I edit undid because I didn't want to combine the surfaces, but that actually would combine them. Or, let me go back to my pointer, deselect everything, and then go back to this move tool. I can just select one surface or one edge. So if I select just the surface, it moves the whole object depending on how I'm pulling this surface. And same with the edge. Moves the whole object depending on how I pull. It's as if the object was made of like taffy or of clay and I can pull it. So this one's cool. An easy demonstration of how you would do this, I'm going to Command Z so that it gets back to that original shape. There we go. I'm going to draw a line from one midpoint to the next midpoint. Right, going to find that midpoint there. See where it says midpoint? Select that. And I'm going to use my move tool to move this edge up. And I get a little house. Alright, so that's cool. Already you got a little house shape. This could be, alright, and you can move. So yeah, so you can move whole objects, or you can just move certain lines and certain surfaces. Any questions so far? Hey, what's your question, Jonathan?
I was just wondering, how do you make ovals?
Okay, so spheres and ovals are a little bit more complicated, and we're gonna get to that in a little bit, but you use arcs. All right?
All right.
Great. By a little bit, we're not actually gonna get to it today, but in a later lesson we will talk about that. If you study architecture at all, you'll just know that those are the hardest shapes to make. It has, instead of having sides, it has infinite curves, and so that's a lot harder for a computer to represent, and it's a lot harder to construct. All right. And when you're moving, you can also select the midpoint. Let me show you that. So if I'm moving, I can select the midpoint of this line, this edge. You see how my cursor has that? And I'm using the moving tool. And then that allows me to easily move the line. All right, as opposed to just anywhere on the edge. Doesn't actually really matter. But. Okay, we saw zooming. And that again is just how it can be helpful to have that human there, if you remember how it started with that woman there, because if you're zooming in and out, you could forget how, how big you're making your objects. It's nice to have that perspective. I'm zooming right now using my cursor, or not my cursor, I apologize, my mouse. If you have a mouse wheel, or if you're using a laptop, and you can, scrolling is also how you can zoom in and out. Okay. So another thing, we can talk about how edges, they naturally like to align. We talked about we talked about how they will align to the different axes, and also that endpoint, on edge, midpoint. But one thing we didn't talk about was inferring. All right, so I'm going to select everything I have here, and delete it. And we have our line. Make a line. And what Sketchup does, which is really smart, is it will guess what we want to do. First, it just tries to align with that axis. But if I go, I'll travel along this edge, and I get to the midpoint. And then I travel over here. Do you see that red dotted line that created? I told Sketchup, I kind of got it to infer that I wanted it to let me use that midpoint as an inference point. So let's say I wanted to create another line that went from the midpoint outwards. I just hold my mouse over this midpoint without clicking, and then I can pull the line over here, and it'll either match up with that first inference line, the second one, or it should, yeah, there we go, that blue dotted line, or it will tell me how to connect with these lines based on the red axis there. So it's kind of giving me guidelines based off of points that I already selected. And those are called inferences. And they can be really helpful when you're building things you don't have to guess, just like how you won't have to guess what half of the line is or where the midpoint of a line is. You can use Sketchup to help you build your shapes. You can connect your lines to build surfaces. You can see what that looks like there. You might be thinking you're building something flat, but really it's more complex. So you guys can mess around with that, just trying to build your own shapes using these separate lines. All right. And you can see exactly how many lines you need to make a surface, more than just folded 2D, but actual 3D. Right, because before I added that last line, this was flat. All of the lines were flat. But by adding the last line, I can complete it so that it's a 3D surface. It's filled in. See how Sketchup fills in with color when a surface is complete. Okay. No questions? All right, everybody, just make, if you guys could come back to this presentation. We're going to look at this presentation again for a little bit. I know it's very distracting to have such an exciting program to use. You want to be building your own shapes. You can definitely do that afterwards, but I can tell if you guys aren't back on the presentation. GoToWebinar lets me know. So if you guys could just turn your attention back to this presentation for a little bit. So we talked about this a little bit. We see the inference line there and how Sketchup will help you orient your lines. And we're going to talk about how we can use Sketchup to make measured lines, lines of specific length, or rectangles of specific dimensions. And the same with circles. Right? All right, so Sketchup, I am going to, I am in a funky view here. I'm going to delete my object that I made. I have one question here. Hey, Jonathan, what's your question?
I have one question. Unmuted. Jonathan, what's your question?
I was wondering how you get the bar on the side that has the other stuff.
Oh, that's a great question. I will actually show you guys that in a little bit. But I mean, I can show you now that you asked.
I can show you now that you asked.
I'm going to mute you though because I'm hearing a recording of my own voice. You go into Tools. Wait, no, I'm sorry. View, Tool Palettes, the large tool set, and that will give you everything. It's a little tempting right now. The reason we don't show you right away is because you guys see all of these really cool options and you want to check them all out. But if you guys could just stick with me, you only have 15 minutes before you can just play around with this software, right? And by the end of today's lesson, you should be able to make an object like, I'll show you the one I made, this house. So if you just stick with me, you can learn how to make really cool objects with these techniques. All right, so to make a measured line, like if you wanted to make a 500 by 500 millimeter box using a 3D printer, and you need it specific, you can use this measurements bar down here. So make yourself a rectangle, and once you've clicked that second time, you can go down here and type, actually I want it to be 50,000, comma, by 50,000. And you can see here that when I pressed enter, it's going to assume millimeters because that's what we started. We said we wanted to be in our template of architecture millimeters. And let me pan over, and it made it bigger. It made it a square, even, because I made it equal on both sides. And we can see the dimensions using our selection tool and selecting entity info. That should come up over here. That the area is the area is really high, right? Because it's this 50,000 millimeters by 50,000 millimeters. Okay, nice house. Thank you. I enjoyed building that house. All right, so you can do that. You can do that with a line too. Let it go. Press escape so that it doesn't follow. And let's say we want it to be 9,000 millimeters. That just shortened it by a lot, but there we go. All right, so does that make sense how you use this down here? All right, any questions with that? You guys can try that out. That's going to be helpful when we are doing our 3D printing. You can do measured circles as well. You're just changing the radius. I can show you that. And so the radius here, you can change it to whatever you want. 50,000 millimeters, for example. All right. And let's talk about this circle for a moment. I'm going to select not the surface, but the edge. And if you right click, you can open entity info. I already have it open, but if you right click, there you go, entity info pops up. And you can see here that this circle has 24 segments. And what that means is that it's really difficult to use a computer to draw a circle because circles, have infinitely many sides. That's what makes a circle very cool. And you can't really do that with a computer because that would have to be a perfect circle. It's almost impossible to do. I don't want to say impossible, but I can't imagine how they would. And so we can make our circle, quote unquote, more perfect by adding more segments. And did you see how if I start with 6, that's not a very good circle. That circle has 6 sides, doesn't look much like a circle at all. That's 24, which is the standard, or just, how it starts. And then you can add way more. And the only thing this changes is if you're going to make like a castle or something like that, and you have your circles more specific, it's more data for the computer to know. So it can take a longer time for people to download that file, or something like that. For now, 24 is definitely fine. But what I wanted to show you guys was that let's build this circle. It's smooth. You can't see the different segments. So if you guys saw before where I went into View, Tool Palettes, and opened my large tool set, we can also draw something called a polygon. And that's in our large tool set, and it's that triangle there. When I draw a polygon, it also has sides. Oops. I'm going to make mine a little bit bigger than that. Does not want to let me. There we go. And I can again, I'm going to use my pointer key to select that side and go to the entity info, and I can give this polygon 24 sides. Double that. Oh man. Let's try that again. It is not wanting to cooperate with me right now. Alright, well I do have a picture of it. I don't know exactly what I'm doing. It's not wanting to let me change it. Oh, there we go. We can make it 12. Maybe 24 is too much for this polygon. But now I need to fill it in. Not going to let me do that. Alright. Sorry about that, guys. Alright, so let's change it to 12. Entity info. Man. Okay. I do not know why this is not cooperating. Well, you can see what happens when I pull this up. You do see the sides. And let's look at this picture I took earlier of it. If you make a 24-sided polygon, from the top it looks really similar to that circle. And when it's flat, it looks pretty identical. But when you pull up using the pull-push tool, you see the different surfaces, all 24 of them as they go around. Whereas the computer will simulate a smooth surface, all connected, when you use the circle tool. So this is a circle tool with 24 sides, and this is a polygon with 24 sides. And when you look at the top, they should be identical. I will look into why that's not working for me right now. With this, but it's probably something that I'm overlooking on my part. Okay. Circles are polygons, that's true. They just have that one continuous side. Okay. So this is where the other class got. So we still have 5 minutes left for today. And if you guys want to see how you build a house, I can show you guys that so you can work on building a building. Some of the tools to do that. This is more just for fun. You don't necessarily need to do this. I thought it was cool. You can start with building a rectangle. Use our pull up to pull up the house. Again, go midpoint to midpoint. I know I'm going pretty quickly here. I just want to show you guys the points. And this will be recorded. And then you use your move key. So you can use the push-pull to pull a whole surface upwards. Or if you just want to pull up part, you can use the move. And you can go from that midpoint there in that line and pull up a roof, which is pretty cool. And then you can do a do all sorts of stuff. You can add a chimney, and you can do that by, I'm parallel to the red axis right now. Now I'm parallel to that blue axis. And let's turn using our orbit to see what this looks like. And then I can again use my push-pull to create my chimney there. Pretty cool. But I am missing one thing. And, oh no, that looks good. You can build a door. And you can see how it's going to want to make it a rectangle as opposed to just this weird shape. It knows what you want to do. And you can again use the push-pull to add a little bit of detail, make it a little bit of a doorway. Right, so you can just add the step by step and make your own buildings and stuff like that. It's a really cool program. The more you look at it, the more detail you can get. For example, oops, you can get that edge and pull it out a little bit. There's just all sorts of cool stuff that you can do. And this is just the beginning, the intro, getting used to the tools before we make actual models. And you can actually import models from the internet as well, and work on those. I'm going to put a hand down. I think it was up from before, but does anyone have a question? Let me see where my questions are. Oh, okay. Someone doesn't see the toolbar on my screen. Again, you're going to go to View. So if it doesn't look like this, if your file doesn't look like this, it might be under File View. You just have to get to this View section and go to Tool Palette, the large tool set. All right, so again, it's View, Tool Palettes, large tool set. Any other questions? Hey, Jonathan, what's your question?
Unmuted. Hey, Jonathan, what's your question?
I was wondering if you could hollow out an object.
You can hollow out an object. It's a good question. Let me show you.
You can hollow out an object.
Oh, wow.
Let me show you. Oh, wow.
There we go. So here I'm going to create a well or a swimming pool. And so I made a circle. And then the first thing we'll do is I'm going to make it 3D. And then actually the next thing I'm going to do is use this offset key. And you can go on the edge of here. It'll select the edge, and then you can go kind of however far you want. I'm going to make it really small. And I created a circle that was going to be similar, just offset to that original circle. And we can see if we get a bird's eye view, it's all the spaces equally. It's set in there, equally. You create a rim. And then again, you can use your push-pull on just this inner surface or the outer surface. So you can pull the outer surface up or push that inner surface down. And now that object is hollow. So I've just showed you guys that we will learn how to use the offset key later. But I can use the offset key here to make my chimney hollow. I didn't make it made it very skinny hollow, but there you go. All right. Well, it's 4:30, guys, and there's another webinar, but I'm glad you got the toolbar, Daniel, and just send me an email if you have any questions. This is important, something real fast, guys, before you jump off. The webinar at 6:30, there'll be an email about this, but the webinar at 6:30 on Wednesday is canceled this week. Instead, there will be a recorded one. If you can only make it to the 6:30, that should be available at that point. We'll try our hardest. But we'll send out an email more on why we had to cancel that one this week. The 4:30 one or the 3:30 one will still be right on schedule. that will not be affected. Question, Jonathan?
Jonathan,
Yes?
Do you have a question?
do you have a question?
No.
All right. Bye, guys. I will see you on Wednesday. Good luck. Have fun building. Send screenshots to Edmodo.